All right, Section 6 of the FDA Guidance of Human Factors Engineering applied to medical devices. Preliminary analysis and evaluations. Preliminary analyses and evaluations are performed to identify user tasks, user interface components, and use issues early in the design process. These analyses help focus the HFUE/UE processes on the user interface design as it is being developed so that it can be optimized with respect to safe and effective use. One of the most important outcomes of these analyses is a comprehensive identification and categorization of user tasks, leading to the list of critical tasks. Sorry, hiccups or something. Human factors and usability engineering offer a variety of methods for studying the interactions between devices and their users. Your choice of approaches to take when developing a new or modified device is dependent on many factors related to the specific device development effort, such as level of novelty of the planned device and your initial level of knowledge of the device type and the device users. Frequently asked HFUE/UE analysis and evaluation methods are discussed below. They can be used to identify problems known to exist with previous versions of the device or device type. Analytical methods and empirical methods can be used for identifying use-related hazards in hazardous situations. These techniques are discussed separately. However, they are interdependent and should be employed in complementary ways. The result of these analyses and evaluations should be used to inform your risk management efforts and development of protocol for human factors validation testing. All right, critical task identification and categorization. An essential goal of the preliminary analysis and evaluation process is to identify critical tasks that users should perform correctly for use of the medical device to be safe and effective. You should categorize the user tasks based on the severity of the potential harm that could result from use errors as identified in risk analysis. The purpose is to identify the tasks that, if performed incorrectly or not performed at all, would or could cause serious harm. These are critical tasks. Risk analysis approaches such as failure modes, effects analysis (FMEA), and fault tree analysis (FTA) can be helpful tools for this purpose. All risks associated with warnings, cautions, contraindications, and labeling should be included in the risk assessment. Reasonably foreseeable misuse, including device use by unintended but foreseeable users, should be evaluated to the extent possible, and the labeling should include specific warnings describing that use and the potential consequences. Abnormal use is generally not controllable through application of HFE/UE processes. The list of critical tasks is dynamic and will change as the device design evolves and the preliminary analysis and evaluation process continues. As user interactions with the user interface become better understood, additional critical tasks will likely be identified and be added to the list. The final list of critical tasks is used to structure a human factors validation test to ensure it focuses on the tasks that relate to device use safety and effectiveness. Note that some potential use errors might not be recognized until the human factors validation testing is conducted, which is why the test protocol should include mechanisms to detect previously unanticipated use errors. Okay. All right, failure mode effects analysis, FMEA. Applying a failure mode effects analysis approach to analysis of use safety is most successful when performed by a team consisting of people from relevant specialty areas. This analysis team might include individuals with experience using the device, such as a patient who uses the device or a clinical expert, and also a design engineer and human factors specialist. The team approach ensures that the analysis includes multiple viewpoints on potential use errors and the harm that could result. The FMEA team brainstorms possible use scenarios that could lead to failure modes and considers the task and potential harm for each possible use error. A task analysis can be helpful in this process by describing user-device interaction. The task analysis should be refined during the FMEA process. All right, fault tree analysis. Fault tree analysis, FTA, differs from FMEA in that it begins by deducing and considering faults, use-related hazards, associated with the device use. A top-down approach, whereas FMEA begins with the user interactions, a bottom-up approach, and explores how they may lead to failure modes. As with FMEA, FTA is best accomplished by a diverse team using brainstorming methods. Even more than for FMEA, a task analysis is essential for constructing an FTA fault tree that includes all aspects of user-device interaction. Although FMEA and FTA are often used to identify and categorize use-related hazards, their effectiveness depends on the extent to which all hazards and use errors that could cause harm during device use can be deduced analytically by team members. FTA and FMEA and related approaches can be employed to identify and categorize use-related hazards, but the results should then be used to inform plans for simulated use testing, which can confirm and augment the findings of the analytical risk analysis processes. Analytical processes do not include actual users or represent realistic use, and because use error is often surprising to analysts, simulated use testing is necessary and should be designed to identify use errors not previously recognized or identified. All right, identification of known use-related problems. When developing a new device, it is useful to identify use-related problems, if any, that have occurred with devices that are similar to the one under development with regard to the user interface, or user interactions. When these types of problems are found, they should be considered during the design of the new device's user interface. These devices might have been made by the same manufacturer or by other manufacturers. Sources of information on use-related problems include customer complaint files and the knowledge of training and sales staff familiar with use-related problems. That's the end of that sentence. I thought it was going to be a multiple. Information can also be obtained from previous HFUE studies conducted, for example, on earlier versions of the device being developed or on similar existing devices. Other sources of information or known use-related hazards are current device users, journal articles, proceedings of professional meetings, newsletters, and relevant internet sites such as, gives you a list, a bunch of FDA things. All known use errors and use-related problems should be considered in the risk analysis for a new device and included if they apply to the new device. All right, analytical approaches to identifying critical tasks. Analytical approaches to involve review and assessment of user interactions with devices. These approaches are most helpful for design development when applied early in the process. The result include identification of hazardous situation, i.e. specific tasks or use scenarios, including user-device interactions involving use errors that could cause harm. Analytical approaches can be used for studying use-related hazardous situations that are too dangerous to study in simulated use testing. The results are used to inform the formative evaluation and human factors validation testing that follow. Analytical approaches for identifying use-related hazards and hazardous situations include analysis of the expected needs of users of the new device, analysis of available information about the use of similar devices, and employment of one or more analytical methods such as task analysis and heuristic and expert analyses. Empirical approaches for identifying use-related hazards and hazardous situations include methods such as contextual inquiry and interview techniques and are discussed in section 6.4, which I will be getting to. All right, task analysis. Task analysis techniques systematically break down the device use process into discrete sequence of tasks. The tasks are then analyzed to identify the user interface components involved, the use errors that users could make, and the potential result of all use errors. A simple example of task analysis component for handheld blood glucose meter includes a task listed in Table 1. All right, I'll just read this table out loud because I think it's helpful. So this is a task breakdown of handheld blood glucose meter. Okay, so 7 tasks. 1. User places the test strip into the strip port of the meter. 2. User lances a finger with lancing device. 3. User applies the blood sample to the tip of the test strip. 4. The user waits for the meter to return a result. 5. The user reads the displayed value. 6. The user interprets the displayed value. 7. The user decides what action to take. All right, that's it. The task analysis can be used to help answer the following questions. Bullet point list. What use errors might users make on each task? What circumstances might cause users to make use errors on each task? What harm might result from each use error? How might the occurrence of each use error be prevented or made less frequent? How might the severity of the potential harm associated with each use error be reduced? Task analysis techniques can be used to study how users would likely perform each task, and potential use error modes can be identified for each of the tasks. For each user interaction, the user actions can be identified using the model shown in Figure 4, which is that, I don't know what that one is. Sorry. The perceptual inputs, cognitive processing, and physical actions involved in performing the step. For example, the perceptual information could be difficult or impossible to notice or detect, and then as a cognitive component, they could be difficult to interpret or could be misinterpreted. Additional cognitive tasks could be confusing or complicated or inconsistent with the user's past experiences, and physical actions could be incorrect, inappropriately timed, or impossible to accomplish. Each of these use error modes should be analyzed to identify the potential consequences of the errors and the potential resulting harm. To begin to address the questions raised above, the analyst will need to understand more specific details, such as bullet point list, the effort required by the user to perform each task, e.g. to apply a blood sample to the test strip correctly, the frequency that the user performs each task, the characteristics of the user population that might cause some users to have difficulty with each task, the characteristics of the use environment that might affect the test results or the user's ability to perform each task, and the impact of the use errors on accuracy, safety, or effectiveness of the device's subsequent operations. All right, this is a long chapter. I'll finish it up. Okay. All right, heuristic analysis. Heuristic analysis is a process in which an analyst, usually HFUE specialists, evaluate a device's user interface against user interface's design principles, rules, or heuristic guidelines. The object is to evaluate the user interface overall, identify possible weaknesses in the design, especially when use error, never user error. Use error could lead to harm. Heuristic analyses include careful consideration of accepted concepts for design of the user interface. A variety of heuristics are available, and you should take care to select the one or ones that are most appropriate for your specific application. Expert review. Expert reviews rely on clinical experts or human factors experts to analyze device use, identify problems, and make recommendations for addressing them. The difference between an expert review and heuristic analysis is that expert review relies more heavily on assessment done by individuals with expertise in a specific area based on their personal experience and opinions. The success of the expert review depends on the expert's knowledge and understanding of the device technology, its use, clinical applications, and characteristics of the intended users, as well as the expert's ability to predict actual device use. Reviews conducted by multiple experts, either independently or as a group, are likely to identify a higher number of potential use problems. Empirical approaches to identifying critical tasks. Empirical approaches to identifying potential use-related hazards and hazardous situations derive data from users' experiences interacting with the device or device prototypes or mock-ups. They provide additional information to inform the product development process beyond what is possible using analytical approaches. Empirical approaches include methods such as contextual inquiry, interview techniques, and simulated use tests. To obtain valid data, it is important in such studies for the testing to include participants who are representative of the intended users. It is also important for the facilitators to be impartial and to strive not to influence the behavior or responses of the participants. Contextual inquiry. Contextual inquiry involves observing representatives of the intended user is interacting with a currently marketed device, similar to the device being developed, as they normally would in an actual use environment. The objective is to understand how design of the user interface affects the safety and effectiveness of its use, which aspects of the design are acceptable and which should be designed differently. In addition to observing, this process can include asking users questions while they use the device or interviewing them afterwards. Users could be asked what they were doing and why they used the device the way they did. This process can help with understanding the user's perspectives on difficult or potentially unsafe interactions, effects of the actual use environment, and various issues related to the workload and typical workflow. Interviews. In individual and group interviews, the latter are sometimes called focus groups, generate qualitative information regarding the perceptions, opinions, beliefs, and attitudes of individuals or groups of device users and patients. In the interviews, users can be asked to describe their experiences with the existing devices, specific problems they had while using them, and provide their perspectives on the way a new device should be designed. Interviews can focus on topics of particular interest and explore specific issues in depth. They should be structured to cover all relevant topics, but allow for unscripted discussion when the interviewee's responses require clarification or raise new questions. Individual interviews allow the interviewer to understand the perspectives of individuals who, for example, might represent specific categories of users or understand particular aspects of device use or applications. Individual interviews can also make it easier for people to discuss issues that they may not be comfortable discussing in a group. Group interviews offer the advantage of providing individuals with the opportunity to interact with other people as they discuss topics. Formative evaluation. All right. Formative evaluations are used to inform device user interface design while it is in development. It should focus on the issues that the preliminary analyses indicated were most likely to involve use safety, e.g. aspects of user interaction with the device that are complicated and need to be explored. It should also focus on those areas where design options for the user interface are not yet final. Formative evaluations complements and refines the analytical approaches described in section 6.3, revealing use issues that can only be identified through observing user interaction with the device. For example, formative evaluations can reveal previously unrecognized use-related hazards and use errors and help identify new critical tasks. It also can be used to, bullet point list here, inform the design of the device user interface, including possible design trade-offs, assess the effectiveness of measures implemented to reduce or eliminate use-related hazards or potential use errors, determine training requirements and inform the design of labeling and training materials, which should be finalized prior to human factors validation testing, and inform the content and structure of human factors validation testing. The methods used for formative evaluation should be chosen based on the need for additional understanding and clarification of user interactions with the device user interface. Formative evaluation can be conducted with varying degrees of formality and sample size, depending on how much information is needed to inform a device design and complexity of the device and its use. The variability of the user population or specific conditions of use, e.g. worst-case conditions, formative evaluations can involve simple mock-up devices, preliminary prototypes, or more advanced prototypes as the design evolves. They can also be tailored to focus on specific accessories or elements of the user interface or on certain aspects of the user interface environment or specific subgroups of users. Design modifications should be implemented and then evaluated for adequacy during this phase of device development and in an iterative fashion until the device is ready for human factors validation testing. User interface design flaws identified during formative evaluation can be addressed more easily and less expensively than they could later in the design process, especially following discovery of design flaws during human factors validation testing. If no formative evaluation is conducted and design flaws are found in the human factors validation testing, then that test essentially becomes a formative evaluation. Yeah. The effectiveness of formative evaluation for providing better understanding of use issues and preventing human factors validation testing from becoming a formative evaluation will depend on the quality of the formative evaluation. Depending on the rigor of the test you conduct, you might underestimate the existence or importance of problems found. For example, because the test participants were unrealistically well trained, capable, or careful during the test. Unlike human factors validation testing, company employees can serve as participants in formative evaluation. However, their performance and opinions could be misleading or incomplete if they are not representative of the intended users, are familiar with the device, or are hesitant to express their honest opinions. The protocol for formative evaluations typically specifies the following. Bullet point list. Evaluation purpose, goals, and priorities. Portion of the user interface to be assessed. Use scenarios and tasks involved. Evaluation participants. Data collection methods, e.g. cognitive walkthrough, observation, discussion, interview, data analysis methods, and how the evaluation results will be used. The results of formative evaluation should be used to determine whether design modifications are needed and what form they should take. Because the testing is conducted on a design in progress, is often less formal and often uses different methods. Okay. The results will not, let me reread that. Because this testing is conducted on a design in progress, is often less formal and often uses different methods, the result will not apply directly to the final user interface design. Formative evaluations can be effective tools for identifying and understanding ways in which the user interface affects user interactions. Quality of the test results and the information gained from them will depend on the quality of the formative evaluation. You should take care not to underestimate or overestimate the frequency of problems based on the formative evaluation results. Participants could be unrealistically well-trained, capable, or careful during these tests, or the device prototype could differ from the final designs in a way that affect the user interactions. Cognitive walkthrough. Okay, we're almost done here. A simple kind of formative evaluation involving users is a cognitive walkthrough. In a cognitive walkthrough, test participants are guided through the process of using a device. During the walkthrough, participants are questioned and encouraged to discuss their thought processes, sometimes called think aloud, and explain any difficulties or concerns they have. Simulated use testing, last section. All right, simulated use testing provides a powerful method to study user interaction with the device, user interface, and performing actual tasks. This kind of testing involves systematic collection of data from test participants using a device, device component, or system in realistic use scenarios, but under simulated conditions of use, e.g. with the device not powered or used on a mannequin rather than an actual participant. In contrast to cognitive walkthrough, simulated use testing allows participants to use the device more independently and naturally. Simulated use testing can explore user interactions with the device overall, or it can investigate specific human factors considerations identified in the preliminary analyses, such as infrequent or particularly difficult tasks or use scenarios, challenging conditions of use, use by specific user populations, or adequacy of the proposed training. During formative evaluation, the simulated use testing methods can be tailored to suit your needs for collecting preliminary data. Data can be obtained by observing participants interacting with the device and interviewing them. Automated data capture can also be used if the interactions of interest are subtle, complex, or occur rapidly, making them difficult to observe. The participants can be asked questions or encouraged to think out loud while they use the device. They should be interviewed after using the device to obtain their perspectives on the device use, particularly related to any use problems that occurred, such as obvious use error. The observations data collected can also include any instances of observed hesitation or apparent confusion, can pause to discuss problems when they arise, or include other data collection methods that might be helpful to inform the design of a specific device user interface. And that is the end of section 6.